The Moderna vaccine. I'm joined live via Skype by Tulenko, the CEO of Corvus Health. Always good to have you on.
Thank you.
So let's start with the latest news. We did see that the advisory panel to the FDA did want to move forward with emergency use of the Moderna vaccine. But as this moves along the approval process, what can we expect next?
Well, I think we can expect a process very similar to what happened to Pfizer last week. So I think hopefully by tomorrow or maybe over the weekend, the FDA will give the official approval for the emergency use authorization. And once that's done, Moderna can start shipping the doses out to all the hospitals and nursing homes in the U.S.
Now, we know the vaccines do have some age restrictions. So talk about children's participation in COVID vaccine trials so far and what's been learned.
So Pfizer back in October started a trial with children 12 and older, and Moderna will soon be starting a trial with children 12 and older. And so hopefully we can see the results of those trials maybe by the second quarter of 2021 and then get the emergency use authorization for that age group. But I think unfortunately for the age group of birth to 12, we probably won't have research on them until the fall. So they may not be able to get vaccinated in time for school. And this will cause some problem because, children that age have more difficulty using masks. They have been shown to be significant spreaders. One thing that we can do to address this is also make sure all the adults are vaccinated around them, that teachers are vaccinated, school staff and parents are vaccinated as well.
And as you mentioned, the impact that children can have in terms of spreading, just how important is it for children to be vaccinated for COVID in the first place?
Well, children certainly have a much lower mortality rate for COVID, but the concern is that they will transmit it to adults who will get ill, or even to young adults. There was a study that was released recently showing that between March and April, there were an additional 12,000 deaths among young adults, and the majority of these were in communities of color, African Americans and Latinos. So we are indeed concerned about the deaths in young adults. And so it would be preferable to be able to vaccinate younger children, and it'll be interesting to see what type of doses they end up using for them. Usually children have about half the dose given to adults, but the same number of doses. For example, I would expect children to get 2 doses of both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine.
Now, a lot of people are wondering whether this is going to be mandated. So what's the likelihood that a COVID vaccine would be required for people to be able to return to school, especially in some of these hot spots?
You may potentially see that in New York and San Francisco, but I doubt it. We do know that Massachusetts made it mandatory for all children to get the influenza vaccine this year. But that's a vaccine that's been around for decades. There's decades of data on it. People are comfortable with it. I think that schools will be reluctant to mandate a vaccine that had been, just approved the last year. So I doubt we'll see the mandatory vaccinations for schools.
Now, obviously, when you have any talk of a vaccine, you have people who want to take it, you have anti-vaxxers, and you have people sort of stuck in the middle. So talk about some of the anti-vaxxers' concerns and how they stack up against the science and some of the outcomes that we've seen so far.
Right. So, the WHO, the World Health Organization, has expressed concern about this infodemic and the misinformation. So both the WHO and CDC have websites that give information about the vaccines and sort of debunk some of the myths that are out there. The 2 of the most common myths that we see, one is that the vaccine causes infertility, which is completely untrue. There's no mechanism for that to happen either. The other myth is that somehow the messenger RNA would permanently change someone's DNA, but there's no mechanism for that to happen. There's no way that that would happen. And in fact, the mRNA just mimics a viral infection. When you get any type of viral infection, the virus enters your cells and forces your cells to make the messenger mRNA. So the advantage of the vaccine is it just skips the virus and goes straight to the mRNA. So once again, the myths that are out there are completely untrue.
And it is very hard to try and combat some of these myths once they're sort of out there gathering steam. So what role are the faith and tech communities and others playing in really busting some of these myths and really easing the concerns and getting the facts out there?
So for the faith community, we've seen a number of religions put out bulletins or special notices to their members. For example, 2 of the largest Jewish communities have recommended that their members get the vaccine. We've seen African American groups make sure that their faith members have access to proper information. And also we've seen the American Catholic Church put out a bulletin that both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are not made with fetal tissue research, so that it's fine for their members to get the vaccination. And it even went as far to say that the two vaccines that are made with fetal tissue research, the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine, if Catholics have no other choice, it's all right for them to get those vaccines. And from the tech side, we see a group of tech companies and fact-checking companies getting together to really make sure that they get rid of any information about vaccines that's on their platform. So we see Twitter, Google, YouTube, Facebook, all working together on this.
All right. Well,